Okay, we're going to call our meeting to order. Need a motion, roll call.
I think we're all here.
Let the minutes reflect all members are here. And before we start, I'd just like to thank the city of Mounds View for hosting our meetings until, I believe, October. The Watershed really appreciates it, and it's a beautiful facility. So if you have any comments for us, please let us know. Otherwise, we will continue as we're going. First thing we'll do is set the agenda.
President Preiner, staff would like to amend the agenda. We would like a new informational item 1. Title would be legislative updates, and then we would renumber accordingly.
Okay. Any other changes?
Madam Chair, I move approval of the amended agenda.
Madam President, I have on my dais here an agenda item 1, Long Lake Sediment Basin. Is this a change to the agenda? Is this?
No.
I see, that's the one.
It's just an addition for the
Thank you.
discussion. Okay, we have a motion
Second?
and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approval of the minutes.
And Madam Chair, I was not at the April meeting, so if someone else wants to.
Madam President, I would move to approve the April 11th, 2022 workshop minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. April 2nd, public.
You go ahead.
And then the,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
the-
Okay, Madam President, I move to approve the April 11th, 2022 ACD 10/22/32 public hearing minutes.
Madam President, I have one change I'd like to make, and I will second it after that. On page 8 of our packet, there's a third paragraph down, says Manager Bradley acknowledged the public concerns and expressed confidence in the board doing the right thing given. I would strike board's basis in science and facts. It sounds like a political statement by a political party. That's not what I said. Given the additional investigation undertaken at the board's directions. That's what I'd like to add.
Okay,
Could you repeat that one?
Certainly. So I'm striking board's basis in science and facts and replacing it with additional investigation undertaken at the board's direction.
and then a second.
I would second that based on that
Corrections.
correction.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Madam Chair, I would move approval of the April 13th regular meeting of the Rice Creek Board of Managers.
Madam President, I have a suggestion on page 12, line 115. It says, the district engineer Adonis stated the map provided by Mr. Thompson shows the current alignment and historic plan alignment from 1910. He states that the district is not proposing to realign the drainage system since the preceding sentence reflects 2 different possible alignments. I would add the words, from its current alignment.
Okay.
And with that addition, I would second the motion.
Motion made and seconded with addition. Any further discussion? All in favor? Consent agenda?
President Preiner, staff have 2 applications for your consideration today. We do have a minor correction for permit 2217 on page 26 of the packet. Give everyone a moment to get there. On page 26, under administrative, it's item 3. This relates to the WMD charges. The fund number, we would like to correct that to 80-07.
Okay.
President Preiner, if I could ask the permit coordinator, Patrick, to repeat that, please.
Sure. On page 26 of the packet, under administrative, item number 3, for the WMD charge. When you kind of see the wow, maybe I'm too loud. You can see the okay. I think it's better now.
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. With the indent under item 3, RCWD fund, there's the fund number S0300200211. We would correct that to be 80-07.
Any other changes? If not, we'll entertain a motion with the correction, please.
Madam President, I move to Caprock permit number 22-017 and 22-018 with corrections.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next thing is open mic. Anybody in the audience for open mic? Minutes can reflect there's nobody present to speak. If somebody comes in, we'll take it later. Items requiring board action. Long Lake Sediment Basin. Kyle?
Madam President, members of the board, we have for your consideration today our bid recommendation for the Long Lake Sediment Basin. There was a handout, I believe, at the beginning of the meeting. I will get to that a little bit later in the presentation. Back in March, the board accepted plans and specifications for the project, and we released plans for bidding, working with the district engineer. We did receive two sealed bids on April 5th. Upon review of those bids, as you're aware, they're a fair amount higher than our original engineer's estimate, including that 20% contingency. The original estimate was $592,000 and change. Upon further review, as you'll see in Houston Engineering's memo in your packet, they find it reasonable to increase their engineer's estimate to $871,000 and change. Even with that, with those adjustments, the bids again remain substantially higher than that estimate. Their memo reviews a few reasons why that could be the case. I'm not going to go into that too much right now. The engineer does recommend that we accept the low bid for this project. Staff concurs with that recommendation. The low responsible bid is from Vite and Company in an amount of $1,147,615. Again, part of our reasoning in concurring with that recommendation is that, again, currently the basin is full. Undertaking the project now puts us in a situation where we have a lot of known quantities, known variables, known conditions. Either delaying the bid or not proceeding with the project at all would put us in a difficult situation, I think. There are other factors at play, long-term unknowns that both in terms of access to the site, access for the dewatering facility that we have a lease for up on top of the hill. Some of those things would change wildly, and delaying the bid, we don't know that there's anything that we could do to modify the project specifications or timing that would cause a reduction in the amount of the bids received. So with that, I think the engineers here, we can certainly answer questions, but our recommendation to proceed with the project does stand. The engineer also recommends that the administrator be authorized to manage a 5% contingency. It's a little over $57,000 in the event there are any potential construction change orders during the project. Staff concurs with that recommendation as well. As far as proceeding with the project, the only remaining items, aside from engaging with the contractor, are receipt of a permit from DNR to actually undertake the dredging activity. That application's been made and decision is pending. Typically, we see a July 1st start date due to fish spawning seasons and things like that, but we'll be working with DNR on that in the coming months. In addition to that, so we do have a recommendation with a resolution that we are recommending the board adopt. to award the project to Veit and Company. In addition to that, because the project is significantly higher in cost than we had originally anticipated, and specifically during the budget proceedings leading up to the 2022 fiscal year, staff is recommending that the board take action to adjust the 2022 budget for our Fund 9501, which is set up for the Long Lake Sediment Basin. What we're proposing is that budget be increased by an amount of $1,204,995, and that is the amount of the project proposed contract and contingency. We'd like this to be clear up front. Again, we have funds within our fund balance, within Fund 95, to cover this expense, as we've discussed previously. But it's better to do this on the front end now than retroactively or during the audit next winter. And I believe Nick could speak to that more if required. But those are our recommendations today. Would be to first make that budget adjustment, and then second to proceed with the project by resolution.
Madam President,
Go ahead.
the existing budget is $500,000, isn't it?
I believe the existing, I think it was $400,000 that was
So, and
originally
that
set.
1.2 million is what we're proposing to pay. So I don't think you want to adjust the budget by 1.2 million. You want to adjust the budget to 1.2 million.
Okay, and I'll
Madam President, Manager Bradley, the only unknown we have here is any pending invoices that might impact that. And so we thought best just to budget the full amount to carry through. But we
Well,
could,
the 1.2 includes a 5% contingency.
correct,
So if you increase it by 1.2, you set your budget now then at 1.6 million. Why would you set it at 1.6 million? Guaranteed success, but I don't think that's what our goal is.
I think,
Madam President, I'll just also note that in your budget, you'd probably need to have, include the amount for the dewatering site that you're leasing as well. So that would be also a number that would have to be in there in addition to whatever we pay out the contractor plus engineering cost for Houston Engineering on site, and as part of our task order that we have. Potentially staff time that would be involved, and I'm not, there probably maybe is even something I'm missing in there too.
Madam President, yeah, to further that, so there's about, what was the total for the lease? Well, the 6 months was, I think, around $85,000. There's a potential that could be extended if necessary, although we have some clawback provisions in the contract if the contractor runs long. But with engineering, I would say at a minimum, you probably want another 100, 150, 200,000 in that range on top of the construction cost in the
Yeah,
budget.
but isn't that already in the budget?
It's
The dewatering costs.
part of
Houston.
that
So
400,000.
again, what's in the budget?
Currently,
400,000 is budgeted.
400,000? So you need to add another 800,000 for this, plus another 100 for Houston, another. So how much do we really need to, do we need it at 1.2? If we do, fine. But
Madam President, as I understood it, the 1.2 is for the engineering company. It's going to perform it, right?
that's,
Or is that the total cost including the,
No,
is that a total cost that includes these leases and other side expenses?
that's strictly,
Yeah, the 1.2 is strictly the
The
construction,
engineering
the
company, right?
contractor, not the
Contract, well, I'm sorry, excuse me, I didn't mean that Houston, it's for the contractor to do the job. So I think, Madam President, that discussing the budget before discussing the project is kind of the buggy before the horse. And,
we don't want to pass a project if we don't have funding by passing.
well, you can, yeah, I think that discussion of the actual project is probably a more very important, and Then if you're going to do the project, then you need to adjust the budget. But adjusting the budget assumes that you're going to do the project.
Nick, Madam
Go
President?
ahead.
Excuse me, Nick, the way I understand it, we're using fund balance to do this, right? I mean, that's where it's coming from, so that if you don't use it, it would go right back where it came from. Correct?
Just
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
that is correct.
Yeah,
The
so we're not,
fund-
I mean,
The
it-
fund balance makes up the difference. Let's not confuse between budgeting, which is a number on paper to say, hey, we believe we're going to expend this amount of money in the year, versus revenue remaining and available to it. So while we budgeted 400,000 for the given year, we've already spent those dollars to some degree for the engineer to get us to this point, the investigation of the property, the first lease payments. Then we have the rest of the lease payments in the neighborhood of approaching $100,000, and now the project on top of it. So we put the full project amount in there at the 1.2 million. If you want to round down by 200,000 or so, I think we would still be
So,
safe.
so Nick, if they had come in with a bid at the amount that we had projected, would you be sitting here asking for a budget increase?
Not likely, because the entirety of the Fund 95 would likely have enough to cover the differential.
Then the delta is only the delta between what you anticipated and what the bid is.
But the lease was not a part of,
Well, my question to you was, would you have been seeking a budget increase but for the difference between anticipated and bid?
yes,
Okay, that's the answer I needed.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions on that?
President Preiner, if I could, to Manager Waller's statement regarding which comes first. Admittedly, it's a bit of, in my estimation, chicken or egg, if you will. The point being, I think it's good for the board to have the public debate about it and know ahead of time on its decision that it would be fund balance spending, or it's beyond its budget that, goes through a good deal of public process to get to that point. So with clarity, so we could take the action to adjust the budget in November, but third-party observer might say, oh, here we go, now, late in the game, you want to make it all good. I just think the record needs to reflect that you've contemplated it, and you certainly are. So either way, I think would be fine.
Let me ask this question. So we're taking out of our general fund. Is that going to be replaced in the general fund then? Are we going to keep collecting or putting it away as we have been and then just replacing it? Or are we starting a new fund to proceed down the road to have to do this again? You see what I'm saying?
Madam Chair, I believe I understand. What I'll say is, got to be careful with the terminology. So the district has saved some dollars for the project. There aren't sufficient dollars in that savings for this. There aren't, but there are enough dollars in the fund balance, and the fund balance being specific to district facilities. Each one of your programs, major programs, has its own fund balance. And here we're speaking specifically about district facilities, which is at 1.5 million in total. Did I cover the question? I
Not
believe I did.
quite.
I think, are you,
Wait, let Kyle.
okay, go ahead, I'm
respond
sorry.
here.
Yeah, Madam President, I think the second half of the question was regarding saving in the future to, should we do this again? As we know, this
Or are we
project.
replenishing our fund?
Yeah, so I think, as Nick stated, there's sufficient fund balance to cover this project without replenishment, that's a budgetary decision for the board as we move into the future, as to how you want to handle your fund balance, which is higher than the minimum requirement right now. Regarding the Long Lake Sediment Basin and clean out into the future, or possibly reserving funds like we have done in the past in each annual budget, self-financing, if you will. There are, what this project will do, we know it's it's been about a 7 to 10 year window on average before this basin needs to get cleaned out. Completing the project now buys us some time to figure out what is feasible at this site long-term. By the time we get around to the next 7 or 10 years, conditions out there may be significantly different in terms of, like I say, we have our access agreement with Ramsey County, but is the dewatering facility going to be available to us again in the future or not? Might that change how we have to approach this project and its long-term feasibility? We've been talking with the city of New Brighton about that, with some of their concerns as well. So, again, that's a decision I think the board can make in future years, but doing this project again, which is part of the reason we're recommending that we proceed right now, is that even next year, if we were to wait, this could look completely different than it does right now. There's too many unknowns if we don't proceed right now as to whether or not we could even do this.
Madam President, so I think that's one of the most important sentences I read in your report here was on page 42, and it's in option 1, and it says, in the future, the district can evaluate alternative means to maintain the sediment basin or potentially abandon it.
Okay.
And I think that it's not in the future. I think that's a decision that should be made now and postpone this until some other time. I realize we have the money. That's not the question. The fund balances, do we have the money or not? We have the money. But we're having a decision to evaluate whether this is an alternative means. And so when I think about that, I recall that we spent a couple $1 million meandering the TCAP property for the specific purpose of capturing the sediment so that it would cut down on the expense of having to clean this basin. We're also at the same time reevaluating whether or not we have an obligation to clean Lock Lake. There's questions that we're looking into that at this time. And a long time policy of the district that we started many years ago, Madam President. I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong here, but we stopped building sediment ponds in the stormwater conveyance system precisely because we didn't want to have, as we did at the public hearing for Ramsey County 8, a problem where you had the stormwater conveyance system and the ponds are mixed together, and people come in and say, well, I can't swim in my pond anymore, and have the engineer, I believe, correct me, Chris, if I'm wrong here, but I think you very carefully numerous times explained that we were talking about the drainage system and not those ponds that were attached to Ramsey County 8. So that's kind of where I look at this at the moment, is that instead of in the future, maybe it's now to make these decisions about how we're going to handle these stormwater ponds. And the final thing I'd say about the stormwater ponds is that you've heard me over the years say that I thought that the district mandates a lot of ponds, but we don't provide the maintenance for them. And that's been our policy for many, many years. The cities, and we're discussing that with 8 right now, that their responsibility. And so I would think that with those long-term policies of having the stormwater ponds maintained by the cities and the $2 million we spent meandering the TCAP property, although some people might think it was just for the beauty of the recreation. Technically, it was supposed to keep the sediment up there. It may be that this time we've come to the point where we should do the reevaluation about the Long Lake Sediment Pond now and not sometime in the future.
Madam President, because of the looking at Lock Lake, I did a fair amount of research onto our water management plan and its requirements with regard to maintaining facilities, the fact that we have been, in fact, recovering money for some period of time. I have no problem with us going forward and reevaluating it in the future. But at this time, we have a district facility and an obligation to maintain a district facility. We've told the public we're going to maintain that facility. It's in our annual report, which we're going to discuss later today. And we only have 60 days on this bid, and now we're down probably 15 or 20 days left on that bid. And if we delay it as would otherwise be a reasonable request, Andrew Waller, that's gone, and we're back to looking at the difficulty of what to do. And I think we're better served by taking a year and doing like we did with Lock Lake, looking to see are there further improvements we could do north of this.
Right.
Is it, what's causing the sedimentation? Is there something we should be doing to minimize it? And looking, and it may be that, in fact, we can't do it another time because there won't be some place to put the sediment. It will become infeasible. But those decisions are tough ones and should be based on study and research, and I don't want to lose this opportunity, even at this cost, to get this done this time.
I would agree with Manager Bradley completely on what you just said. I think that makes good sense. And what I was going to say before about the fund balance, I think Kyle covered it, so I don't need to repeat it.
Marcy, comments?
Well, I'm glad I'm on a board with such thoughtful board members, because you've pretty much discussed some of the items that I was concerned about. I do agree with you, Manager Waller, that yes, we need to take a serious look at these ponds. Bowser right now has a stormwater group getting together to look at them, not only in rural areas but also in urban areas. So I think tagging along with them or finding out how they're having their discussion, because this is only going to get more and more difficult with more and more ponds. To your point about having all these little stormwater areas around which aren't being maintained, they only give us some benefit for a limited amount of time. So yes, I think we should do something now. From what I understand, the work that's done on the Middle Rice Creek should really reduce the amount of sediment that's coming, and we'll know that.
When we know that, yeah.
Yeah, and to your point, this is probably not the place to have a sediment pond. You know, it's difficult to access, and so there might be a creative way to stop that sediment someplace that's more accessible. So I'm prepared to accept this bid, and
Motion one.
I could do the motion. All right.
Let's do it.
So let's do the first motion. I move to adjust the 2022 budget for 95-01 Long Lake Sediment Basin Maintenance by $1,204,995. This includes the contract price of $1,147,615 with a 5% contingency of $57,380.
Second?
We have a motion and a second.
Madam President,
Further discussion. Go ahead.
I'm going to vote no because I think that we would be better served to bring it back at our next meeting with the correct amount of money to increase our budget by, which reflects the anticipated expenditure based on actual budget, rather than increasing it by the full $1.2 million, as for the reasons I've discussed earlier this morning.
So would you like to can I table this?
Well, not table this motion, because I'm opposing this motion. I'm asking them to bring us back a different at our next meeting a different proposed.
So you're
Right,
saying
but
that
I don't want the motion, with this much money, I would like to have the amount clear so that we can,
Well,
So how
then
do we
we
do
could
this?
table it and ask the staff bring us back
yep,
a review of this question of how much would be appropriate.
right. So I made the motion, so I should be able to request a table.
Okay.
Okay, Nick?
Nick?
Nick,
Madam Chair, could I ask, would it be acceptable, after a few agenda items here, Kyle would be free, we could step away, take a look, come
Certainly.
back with a number, and we'll do it
I
yet
I
this
have
meeting?
no objection to reflecting reality,
Okay.
so.
We need to have it for the timing purposes of getting this done, I believe.
yeah, that would be my
Or we
concern.
could.
Except for
also-
we're not gonna spend this thing until the summer.
Yeah,
plenty of
so
time
we
for
could
the-
do the
You
resolution.
could do the resolution and the budget anytime.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But if you wanna do it now, that's fine. That's-
Well, if you
Well,
want
I
to table.
don't want it, I'll table it. I move to table this motion.
Okay, so then we can go to the next part,
So, table.
proposed motion. We have to have a time certain, or we can, if we can get it today, fine.
Nope.
Okay,
Table is fine.
this table is fine, okay.
Is there a time certain for the table? I mean, you have a time with 60 days involved here in these bids or such, or that seemed to be an issue earlier. You want a time certain when you bring it back?
Let's see,
We need
Madam Chair, what I would say is, the record will show good deliberation about your budget. So I think it will be good to outside parties to see that you've fully considered that. We can bring it back to the next board meeting.
Yes.
With the amount, so that would be May
11th.
11th.
May 11th, okay. So the time certain, tabled May 11th.
May 11th board meeting, yes.
Okay,
Okay. Got that, Teresa?
We have to vote on this now, the table?
Huh?
A vote on the table?
you don't vote on the table, do you?
Yeah, it's not debatable, but you vote on it.
Oh, okay. So we have well, we don't have a motion, we have a motion to table. We need a second then.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Didn't you motion the table?
She did.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a motion here.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So we're gonna do the money second. So right now, we're gonna work on the proposed motion, the resolution dash 2022-08.
All right.
Page 44. Or
So does that include,
look at the
it
price.
Now
does
for
not
the
include
resolution, then.
anything about the budget? except- Okay. So, Madam Chair, I move to accept Resolution 2022-8, awarding contract for the Long Lake Sediment Basin Dredging Project. Whereas Rice Creek Watershed District has adopted and implemented a water resource management plan in accordance with Minnesota Statute Section 103B 231, and whereas pursuant to the Rice Creek Water Management Plan, the district has previously established and maintains the Long Lake Sediment Basin to intercept sediment loads from Rice Creek before they reach Long Lake. And whereas the Board of Managers on March 9th, 2022, by Resolution 2022-5, acknowledged receipt of final project plans and specifications from the district engineer, Houston Engineering, Inc., and directed preparation of the necessary documents to solicit bids for construction of the project. And whereas in accordance with the applicable legal requirements, the district duly advertised for sealed bids for the construction of the project on an April 5th, 2022, via an online virtual bid openings were opened and read aloud with 2 bids being received for the project. And whereas Houston Engineering, Inc. has submitted a memorandum dated April 18th, 2022, concluding that the low bid was submitted by Vet and Company in the amount of $1,147,615, that the bid is responsive, and that Vet and Company is responsible bidder, and that the engineer recommends award of the bid accordingly. And whereas the board occurs in the findings of the district engineer, therefore be it resolved by the Rice Creek Watershed Board of Managers that the contract for the Long Lake Sediment Basin Dredging Project is awarded to Vet Company for the contract price of $1,147,615. And on the advice of the district engineer and district council, the district administrator is authorized to sign and transmit the notice of awards affecting acceptance of the bid, sign the contract agreement, and issue the notice to proceed where prerequisites for the insurance have been met by the contractor, and the district administrator is authorized to sign the contract increasing the contract price in an aggregated net amount not exceeding 5% of the contract price.
I'll second that,
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Madam President.
Yes.
I just want to remind the board that one of the reasons we spent $2 million to meander it was supposedly to bring the sediment down. We wouldn't be cleaning this basin as often. And I don't see that that's happening here at this time. I think we're always going to have sediment in there, and so it's come to a point where you're probably going to have to decide what the if we're going to let the basin fill back in and just keep the channel or not, what goes on there. And second, I know this might be a little odd, but there's a economic theory by a guy named Keynes, who's been kind of who came out of
Is that an
the
editorial comment by a
when the rooster crows. And it was about government theory, theory about government spending. And so he thought that government spending should be increased dramatically when times are bad. And when times are good, there's no need to put a lot of government spending in here. So I suggest to you, by the dramatic price increases that are going on here, the economy's pretty good. I mean, be able to have as the staff indicated, some of the bidders decided they didn't want to bid on it. They withdrew their bids. And so the cure for high prices, which is what we face here, this is a price increase from like $300,000 10 years ago. The estimated engineer's price at $500,000, and now he's upped it to he can justify 800 some thousand. Is still dramatically higher by $500,000 more or less than what the or more than what the original guesstimates were, or estimates. And so the cure for high prices, as they say, are high prices, because people stop buying them. And so that's something we should consider maybe in the future, that we wait until the prices are better. Or
I'd like to make a comment too. I think that we haven't seen the results of the work that we've done up on Rice Creek, so we don't know if this is already filled in. This is from results from before. So if we bring it up to date, we get these results, we understand the results of the meandering, then we can make decisions on the value of doing it again or not doing it again, or set our parameters, or set our budget, or however we're going to reevaluate the situation. But what's in there now is a product of before.
Right.
We don't know what the results of the meandering is. Maybe it's nothing. We don't know that yet. So hoping we're right, there will be a huge difference in the fill-in time next time.
Well, Madam President, I just point out to you that we had the same quandary on a much smaller scale, the same question. It had to do with the, what do we call it, the Long Lake boat shelter or basin, what's just west of the railroad tracks there. And they had two entrances, one in and one out. And the one that's on the upstream side continuously filled in. And the first time we cleaned it out, and the second time when we came to clean out the basin, we made a decision not to touch that any longer, meaning we weren't going to do that. So that's the same decision that we face again today, only it's in larger dollars this time than just cleaning out the entrance to the boat marina.
Madam President, I fully concur that we need to plan for the future. We planned for the future 5 years ago, it's 8 years ago, and we've been planning for this project for 8 years. It's time for us to execute on this project, but not time to commit to the next one. And that we need to study, number one, is there something we can do to reduce sedimentation? Number two, it may not even be feasible to use this particular sedimentation pond for removal in the future based on logistics. And if that's not possible, I'm thinking the same thing for Lock Lake. Is there a way where you just, as Manager Wallace said, dredge a channel? What are the options? And we do that based on knowledge, with the language I struck earlier, science and facts.
You want that back now, huh?
Exactly.
So trying to avoid sounding like that politician, but at any rate, we need to figure out what's the best course of action going forward, but I think this is the best course of action today.
Manager Wagon?
I agree. I agree with Manager Waller that we do have to look at that, but I think it would be a mistake to stop this now. I think we need to take care of this and then look at that point going forward.
Okay. Marcy hasn't commented? Anything? Okay. Go ahead, Nick.
Madam Chair, I'd note that the work on the lagoon on Rice Creek, just north of Long Lake, is, as I understand the records to reflect, a matter of excavation for recreational use and access to the lake that a developer put into place. We don't, as staff, see that as under the district's watershed management plan. So to me, there is a distinction of why we stopped doing that. Further, I'll note that a general position that staff see a water quality benefit to the Long Lake sediment basin, whereas the Lock Lake sediment basin we don't see as having a direct water quality benefit to Lock Lake because of it being a reservoir, and that sediment would collect there regardless. Footnote, Mississippi River benefits of that, and whether or not. In that case, it's about documentation of, in my mind, that the district board's decision to maintain that basin or not just has good foundation, some facts, investigation on how they want to proceed. Last thought would be that doing this work now does maintain that water quality benefit of the Long Lake sediment basin, and it quote unquote buys some time for the district to investigate alternatives to protect Long Lake, whether that be upstream stabilization or other measures that staff might find available.
Okay, we have a motion second.
So, Madam President, just one little short comment to add on to that. Yes, I recognize that the district has made a conscious effort for many years now, decades, to move away from the recreational purpose and more towards the utility of the stormwater conveyance system, and that being one of the reasons for not providing the continuous maintenance to that recreational bay. But I also want to point out that at the same time the district made that decision, that when we did a water quality project for Bald Eagle, that we created a special taxing district for that. And that maybe that might be in the future as we consider and look at this, that we consider a special taxing district for the Long Lake area for their direct benefit that comes from the water quality for their recreational view. And with that, Madam President, I yield back the floor to you.
We'll call the vote then. Manager Waller?
Yes.
Manager Wynant?
Yes.
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wageland?
Yes.
Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. Okay, continue on. Schmidt is next. Anoka County Ditch 5362, page 45.
Madam President, Board of Managers, Next for your consideration is the ACD 50, Knuckle County Ditch 5362 main trunk repair bid project recommendation. Staff and the engineer recommend awarding the project to U.S. Site Work in the amount of $370,000, $782.40. We further recommend that an additional 10% of the contract be included for potential contingencies. The district engineer will lead you through the memo they prepared for the recommendation.
Okay. Go ahead, Chris.
Madam President, Board of Managers, I'll just give a brief rundown of our memo. As we do in practice and as required for these projects, we did a public bid under 103D 811, advertised through a couple different means, including the district's official advertisement and through Quest CDN. One interesting thing that we've done in the last year or two, and kind of a product of COVID, is that we've now handled our bidding online. And so it's all done by online service, which actually provides quite a value in that it not only reduces effort of having people come to the district and do sealed bins and envelopes and those kind of things, but also eliminates any sort of mathematical errors that we were seeing in the past on these things, which was quite frequently. I'd say that upwards of 50% or more of the public bids I've done have had involved trying to resolve mathematical errors by the bidders on their forms. So that's just a sidebar to let you know that we're continuing to evolve in that process. We did receive 3 bids for this project. All 3 bids came in above what our engineer's opinion of probable construction cost was of $310,750. However, I'll just note a couple things regarding that. One is that we are recommending a reduced retainage from what we had recommended and budgeted prior. So if you add up our engineer's cost estimate from before, which had a 20% contingency added on in addition to our estimate of $310,750, it's still going to come in a little less than what the low bid here was with the reduced 10% contingency, but it's quite a bit closer. I think what we have was the low bid is about 19% over that engineer's estimate there. So we're in an area I think we're relatively close, and again, with the volatility of bids that we've seen and other things, and we just had the discussion on the previous item there, we're at a point where I'm very comfortable with recommending the bid here. We did confirm that the low bidder, U.S. Site Work, Inc., they met the qualifications that were required through our bid package. We've reached out to references, including state agency, or I should say governmental agencies that they've worked for, and they've indicated that the work they've completed was done per spec and performing well. So we do, again, recommend award of the project to U.S. Site Work, Inc. of $373,782.40. And as I noted, we recommend that 10% of that contract, or $37,078.24, be budgeted for change orders that may result from unforeseen conditions on the site.
Okay,
Would you like a resolution?
go ahead on the resolution. Ellen.
Okay, Madam President, I would move to approve Resolution 2022-09, awarding the contract for the repair of Anoka County Ditch 5362 main trunk repair with the following resolutions. A, the contract for the repair of ACD 5362 main trunk repair is awarded to U.S. Site Work, Inc. for the contract price of $370,782.40. B, the district administrator shall sign and transmit the notice of award, sign the construction agreement, and issue the notice to proceed on advice of council and the district's engineer when prerequisites for issuance and bonding have been met by the contractor. And C, the district administrator may sign task order, change orders, increasing the contract price in an aggregate net amount not to exceed 10% of the contract price, which is $37,078.24, to address unforeseen conditions or omissions discovered as the project progresses.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion.
Madam President, I'd note that while these price increases from the bids are greater than what the engineers estimate, I would also point out that they're only about 25% greater, whereas in the previous issue, we were talking 150. And I just think that should be noted. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? We'll call it. Manager Waller.
Yes.
Manager Wynan.
Yes.
Manager Bradley.
Yes.
Manager Wagman.
Yes.
Manager Pryor, yes. Motion passes.
Madam Chair, can I ask Chris a question about the bidding process? Not only are they opened online through, looks like through Teams, but the proposals go online and fill out a form as opposed to, what do you mean by that the math is better and all of that? Is it a, yeah.
Sure, yeah, Madam President, Manager Wynan. The process that we use, there's a service that's called Quest CDN, and essentially we set up the bid right online there with all the bid items on there and all the quantities, and the contractors simply fill in the unit cost for each item, and the program automatically does the math, tallies up the extension on each bid item, and then tallies up the total at the end of it. So that system automatically does all the math for the bidder in that process. And the bidder also submits things like a bid bond. They submit their signed forms that they're required to provide as part of the bid process. Anything that we normally would require them, they upload that to the system. And then when we open bids, we verify before we actually see the items, we verify that they provided all of the required items like acknowledgement of addenda, and any of the other things they're required to submit. And then once we've verified that each one of the bidders has met those requirements, then we open up the next part of the system, which allows us to see those costs. So in that way, they're treating them like sealed bids, in other words, in that process, and we can kick them out if they're missing a step before we actually quote unquote open it and see the number.
So is this developed pre-COVID, or is this a result of COVID?
I believe that they had started developing it pre-COVID, but they accelerated its implementation with the onset of COVID, and that's when we started working and using it, and it's, I believe, been a godsend to the bidding process.
And Patrick, then, is there something similar to when folks try to get a permit? Because you've talked about having conversations early on with permittees to make sure they had all their information compiled before we even started looking at it.
Sure, something that we are exploring. I'm sure it would be a different system, but yeah, being able to submit permit application information through a website compared to just sending it an email or dropping it at the office, whatever they might do.
Tom, do you have a comment?
Very good.
No, just wanted to be available for questions.
Okay. Any questions for Tom?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Birchwood Village, Nick.
Thank you, board members.
Yes, Board of Managers, the city of Birchwood Village approached the district regarding some lift station challenges that it has. It's seeking the district's support, a letter of support in regards to the matter. This was brought to my attention from Mayor Mary Wingfield via Manager Waller. The district has supported past situations involving sanitary sewer. There is a resolution of support, not regarding any funding, on page 53 of your packet. And the resolve, you'll note it doesn't express any funding support here, and the motion is on the bottom of page 52. I did ask Mayor Mary Winfield to join us. I believe she's in attendance virtually, for her to share the situation and the need and to document on the record for the board their understanding, because otherwise there's no report that the district has or otherwise on the matter.
Would the mayor like to speak?
Yes, I would. I appreciate the invitation. I'm going to leave my video off because my bandwidth, not mentally, but physically with my Wi-Fi is limited. So maybe my bandwidth technology-wise too. But anyway, this is a request for us rebuilding, actually replacing our lift station, which is the not only the primary, but it handles our entire effluent accumulation for the city. And we have one other lift station that feeds into it, but without this lift station, nothing flows. So this came to a head about 2 years ago when there was a water main break in White Bear Township. And as a result of the geology in the area, that water that was flowing out of the water main break seeped through the fractures in the substrata and ended up in our lift station and basically blew out the electronics. So you'd think one could just replace the electronics and move on, but in the course of this damage, it also permanently provided a pathway for perpetual humidity, and so the corrosion factor now is staring us in the face. This is just going to be one continuous repair project, and it's, bad place to be when everything that comes into your system is only 150 feet away from White Bear Lake should it fail. And we've been in that position before. It's been a number of years, but now we definitely need to get after it, and we're looking for funding because this far exceeds what our capacity is. It certainly wasn't on our radar for capital improvements, and you all know after listening to your budget issues, it certainly wasn't on our radar to do any replacement anytime soon. The total cost for the project is estimated at $600,000. The federal requirement is for us to participate at a rate of 20%. So that's where the resolution has $120,000. As you indicated, there's no obligation financially for the Rice Creek Watershed, but in working with Representative Betty McCullum's office, they were supportive of the idea and recommended that we reach out to partners who could support this from the standpoint of the broader community support, hopefully the better funding opportunities we will have to accomplish this. And so that's why we're here today. Just a little bit more on the lift station, as it says in the first paragraph. This is a OSHA non-compliant, functionally obsolete, and not a good system to have online anymore. And so that also is the impetus for going forward. So I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions.
Any questions from the board, or Nick? Go ahead.
Excuse me, Board of Managers, I'll just note the importance of Mayor Wingfield's comment about the proximity to White Bear Lake. That's paramount in the reason that this is before the district. The failure of the lift station could impact White Bear Lake itself.
Madam President.
We've seen what happened to Lost Lake when there was a failure. We've seen what happened in Bald Eagle when there were several failures. Something to be avoided. I understand, of course, that we don't have the ability to replace, stormwater facilities as a budgetary issue ourselves, but certainly we should lend our moral support for this.
Madam President. Thank you, Mayor, for attending today and your explanation. I'll move Resolution 2022-10. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Managers of the Rice Creek Watershed District, after reviewing the lift station project and its funding opportunities, does hereby express its support for the city's project to replace the lift station and related applications for state and federal funding.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Madam President, I concur with Manager Bradley, and in the past, we've worked on these situations, and they're very important, and we want to maintain good partnership relationships because we're going to need their help sometime in the future, as we've had from their help in the past.
Okay, we'll call the vote then. Manager Waller?
Yes.
Manager Winan?
Yes.
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wagman?
Yes.
Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. Thank you, Mary.
I do appreciate it, and I look forward to working with you in the future, specifically with more drainage issues coming before you on the Halls Marsh, and knowing how well you proceeded with the Long Lake project. We're hopeful we can move forward on that as well. So thank you for your time. And the other request is I hope I can get a signed copy of this document by the end of today.
I'm sure we can. Yes, we can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.
Oh, you too. Okay, Nick, audit.
Yes, President Priner, the next item on the agenda is the district's financial report. We commonly refer to it as the audit. Redpath, your consulting accountant, completed the review of the district's financials, and it also fulfilled its obligation to submit the report to the state auditor and Bowser. In my memo, I point out the two letters to the managers on their governance in the packet on page 123. This is the consideration of internal controls, and given the limitations of Redpath's work, there's a lot of qualifiers in there. They didn't find any material weakness of the district's work. And then the second letter on page 125, which is the Minnesota Legal Compliance Report, having nothing identified that the district failed to comply with the Minnesota Legal Compliance Audit Guide. So I'll stop there and entertain any questions from the board.
Try that last statement again.
Madam President, Nick and I have previously discussed this.
Okay.
So on page 9 of the report, 69 of our packet is a 2-paragraph section. Not new to this, is every year I've reviewed this thing, this statement has been here, but it's always, every time I read it, I go, huh. So I finally took the opportunity to say, what does this mean? So what it says is, I'll read the first sentence of the first paragraph and the first sentence of the second paragraph. Accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America require that the budgetary comparison schedules and schedules of pension information as listed in table contents be presented to supplement the basic financial statements. And it goes on and says, but that isn't necessary for us to actually approve the basic financial statements, and we're approving the basic financial statements. And the next paragraph leads, the first sentence says, management has omitted the management's discussion and analysis of the accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America require to be presented to supplement the basic financial statements. So I said, basically, now I'll turn it to Nick, why don't we give this information?
Board of Managers, the financials discussion by the managers is typically undertaken by an entity that would be looking to anchor its materials, its financial condition for solvency, for bonding, good rating numbers and that sort of thing. We did ask Rebecca from Redpath to speak to you directly in regards to this matter. She's probably online. Madam Chair, if you'd like to hear from her.
Absolutely. Rebecca, please.
Good morning, Board of Managers. Thank you for inviting me to join you. Nick asked me to comment on the management discussion and analysis, the MD&A. It is a piece of the financial statements that the Government Accounting Standards Board, referred to as the GASB, requires entities to include financial statements. But from a cost-benefit perspective, the vast majority of the smaller units of local government that we work with do not include it. It what it does is it provides the district an opportunity to tell the story with words that the numbers present, and add a little narrative and some explanation for some of the variances and ongoings that the numbers in the statements show. However, it is a significant time investment on behalf of staff. And so historically, my understanding is that the district has elected not to prepare that just due to the time involvement, and then the lack of benefit on the other side. As Nick alluded to, most of the entities that I work with that choose to prepare the MD&A have some external driving force that is encouraging them to do so. Whether they have bonding, where the rating agencies are reading their financial statements every year and they want to have that opportunity to provide narrative, or there is a financial award program that requires it. Some sort of external influence is usually prompting the inclusion of that for most of the entities that I work with.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so if we decided we wanted to, what would be the cost of adding that in at some point? Generally?
The cost to add it in, there would be some audit fees involved, and there would be, those would be limited though. We would build our standard hourly rates for any assistance that the district needs to implement it. And the first year that it's included would be the most time intensive. And I don't know that I'm prepared to provide a quote in that regard today, but it's definitely, the cost is greater in staff time than audit fees.
Okay, so it would be our staff time that would be considerably more. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could, Rebecca was kind enough to send over the checklist for the matter. It is written at a accountant's professional level, the terminology, et cetera. I believe staff would need hourly support from the accountant to know what documents it was trying to assemble to answer the question. I believe the board would look forward to their support in discussion as it formulated the verbiage of what it would like to express in those documents. And again, reflecting on what Rebecca stated would be that what is your motivation to do so, so that it was accomplishing that goal.
So if we decide some year we might have to bond or want to bond, that's where we would start in, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, if that was the motivator to do so.
Then we would have to do that. Okay.
President Pryor, one more thing. I believe Manager Winan made a note regarding my statement in my introduction. The Minnesota Legal Compliance Report, your auditor found nothing in the district's materials in there for the district complied with the Minnesota Legal Compliance Audit Guide.
It did comply with
It did comply.
It did comply,
yes.
yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Madam President, the reason it took me so many years to finally say, why don't you explain this to me, is because I always knew that this got sent to Bowser, and Bowser reviews it, and Bowser has never had a problem.
Yeah.
So clearly, we are operating, quote, within the law.
Yes.
It's just that there's this hole that classic auditor speak merely tells us what it doesn't know when it doesn't know.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Any other questions? If not, we need a vote.
Well, I would just like to make one comment before, I sound like a broken record every year, but I think that's a good thing because every year, the staff has done a great job. We've had perfect audits. I think this is the 11th year in a row with no findings. And I just think that's pretty impressive work by our staff. So I'd just like to give them kudos on that. That's it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we still need to motion here.
Madam President, I move to accept and authorize the filing of the Rice Creek Watershed District 2021 Annual Financial Report and Audit.
Second.
We have motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Teresa.
Yes, no small piece of work.
Yep.
No.
Okay, number 5, annual report. Okay, Beth.
Another chunk of work.
Good morning, everyone. President Preiner, Board of Managers, thank you for letting me join you today with the annual report. I am going to share my screen. I have a short presentation, just 3 quick slides. There we go. Just a few reminders on the annual report that you have received a draft of and hopefully have the opportunity to review. Just a reminder that we are following Minnesota statute by submitting our annual report within 120 days of year's end.
Beth, could you speak up a little bit, please?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Just a reminder that we are following Minnesota laws when we are submitting our annual report to the Board of Water and Soil Resources within 120 days of year's end. The contents are an assessment of our previous year's annual work, so that's 2021, projected work for the next year, which is this year, 2022, and other administrative criteria, including information from our audit. We've included an evaluation component. We do align our annual report to our watershed management plan and to some of our MS4 requirements. That is not necessarily required, but we have chosen to move forward in that way because we think it is the most transparent and gives a better accounting of what we're doing. Our annual report includes 13 activity reports and the work plans. I also want to point out the gorgeous photo that we used on the cover of this year's annual report was shared with us by a man named Jim Blake, who lives on Clear Lake in the city of Forest Lake. He is a friend and neighbor of our CAC chair, Doug Ramseth. So he shared this photo with us as well as a number of others that were used in the annual report this year and will also be featured, many of them, on our new website. So where are we right now? We are still continuing to review kind of formatting and typographical errors, constantly improving until we submit it. I have received some comments from a few of you for catching some of those errors. Thank you very much. We're always kind of integrating those comments as well as corrections. We've been adding a few more photos and then just continuing that formatting. The very last thing that I will do is complete the table of contents and the photograph table once all formatting is final. The 2021 annual report, we will submit it to Bowser, the Commissioner of the DNR and the Director of the Division of Ecological and Water Resources at the DNR by this Friday with the approval of this board. The reason we do send it to that number of people is while 103D expands who we need to send this report to, not just Bowser, but those other entities and individuals as well. So with that, I would just ask if there are any questions of me regarding the annual report.
Any questions from the board? Go ahead, Mike.
Madam President, actually, my question is probably more to Kyle. On page 21 of the report, which is page 153 of the packet, there's a statement that the new IESF system constructed on Rcwd 11 experienced recurring electrical issues throughout 2021. Despite this, the system treated $5 million. So, Kyle, the question is, because I might get asked, what was the problem with electrical and has it been fixed?
Madam President, Manager Bradley, we believe the problem has been fixed at this point in time. If I'm being honest, we don't know what happened out there. I think the system may have been struck by lightning, like in early spring of last year. So it was, we had kind of recurring, if you will, kind of phantom electrical demons. I mean, being euphemistic here, but Level loggers were causing problems. The programming within the control unit itself was like changed in some way, which is not otherwise possible. So we spent a lot of time with EPG, the company that designed that system, in the field last year, troubleshooting, working on that. Got everything fixed, I would say probably by September or so. It was working great, and then the impeller went out of the pump. So they've had the pump over the winter. The impeller's been replaced. There's some wiring that needed to be repaired as well. So we had some struggles last year, and then there were other times of the year where it would have otherwise been operable, but with the drought that we saw, there was no pumping going on because there was no water in the ditch. But also then no loading to Bald Eagle Lake. So, but yeah, we believe that as soon as I get the pump back from EPG, hopefully in the next couple of weeks here, we'll have that system up and running again.
Thank you, Kyle.
Madam President,
Go ahead.
Kyle, that's a pretty new system, all warranty work.
A mix of some warranty work and some of the labor time with EPG not covered by warranty.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Beth? Kyle? No, I don't have a
I
motion.
actually made,
Oh, go
may
ahead.
I make one note? I
Sure.
apologize for interrupting. There was a comment about page 43 of the annual report, which is related to collaboration. And the recommendation or the preference to perhaps remove Hennepin County from the list of organizations that we collaborate and partner with. Staff would recommend keeping them listed. We do collaborate with Hennepin County in some unusual ways, maybe not quite as traditional as some of our others, but through some outreach and programming, collaborative partnerships in some of the organizations we belong to, providing feedback and kind of sharing resources and information. We do make a concerted effort to kind of live in this watershed space with Hennepin County. So it may not be project-based, but we do have a lot of collaboration programmatically.
So as the author of that question, first I stumbled over the word extensively, knowing that
Yes.
based on my experience with what I know we do with the other counties and what we do with everyone else, it just seemed to me odd to put Hennepin in there, and I didn't want someone from Hennepin to reach out and say, "What?"
Yeah.
So
You don't want to call us on it.
So take out the word extensively, because what we do speaks for
Absolutely.
itself.
Absolutely.
And then I will withdraw my concern.
Thank you.
Okay. We need a motion
With correction.
with corrections. It's 132 of our packet.
Yes.
132. Well, I can make a motion. I move to approve the 2021 annual report with any necessary formatting and non-substantive changes, and authorize submission to the Board of Water and Soil Resources and other required recipients by the deadline. And that includes those
Any changes?
changes. Yep.
Yep, that includes it.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
It's a beautiful report.
Yeah.
The photographs are lovely and tell a story themselves. So thanks for the hard work you put in on this, Beth. And has a question to you, has the CAC seen this already?
They've not seen this version of it. They will be getting a more extensive report on it in May. They get a copy of it. What we did was did a presentation on an overview of our March 23rd City-County Partner Stakeholder Meeting with the CAC. In addition, we had some of our CAC members come to that meeting. And then we discussed how much of that information was informing what was in the annual report. So they haven't seen the report itself, but they know of the process that we're going through and what's going into it, and they get it next.
I believe they will be very pleased. Yeah, thank
We
you.
have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Citizen Advisory Committee operating statement, Beth.
Well, it's me again. Thank you, President Preiner and Board of Managers. I'm coming to you with some information from the Citizen Advisory Committee. Staff, several years ago, the CAC updated their operating procedures. Staff felt that it might benefit the group to kind of reflect on these more frequently than every 5 or 10 years. And so went to the CAC, particularly because we had some new members, and asked them to review the operating procedures and identify places where they thought that there could be improvement or any changes that they would want. One of the things that came out of that discussion, and it kind of aligned with our timing for with the CAC electing new officers, was that they really wanted to see position descriptions for the roles. So they also made some requested changes for the CAC, primarily as it related to using technology, online technology for meeting and kind of the arrangement of the operating procedures. But then we also developed some position descriptions and duties for the chair, the vice chair, and staff. Those are before you now. Those were submitted to you. I will share that we anticipate additional changes to the position descriptions next year. One of the things we weren't really able to track was the time commitment, and that was one of the questions. If I take this role, what is the time commitment? And so we've asked members of the CAC, and particularly the two officers, to monitor and track the amount of time commitment it takes to be in those roles. And next year, we will embed those into the position description as estimates. So that's what you can anticipate seeing next year. But otherwise, the CAC has moved to approve their operating procedures and the position description. No official action is needed by this board. That can be accepted with consensus agreement. If there are concerns, you can share those and we can take them to the CAC, or the liaison can share them at the next meeting, and the CAC can choose to review.
I only have one question, Beth, that's on 199 of our packet. And it's probably been in there before, but it's under section 2B. I find it hard to believe that we can't find enough people within our cities and district that we would bring in other interested parties or technical persons from other areas.
I saw that.
And I'm just wondering if that's needed or if it's just.
I believe that is an interpretation of the rules that the state requires a citizen advisory committee. Rice Creek, quite frankly, has one of the best examples of an advisory committee, well attended, and authentic active work. I would need to look into it more carefully, but I believe it is my understanding that the allowing people to come in from other parts that are kind of as experts that aren't from our watershed district, I think that's an interpretation of the rules surrounding CAC. Rice Creek chooses not to do that. We could if we ever got to that point. I see Lewis just popped on. Lewis, as I stumble through this answer, tell me, was I close?
Madam President, Managers, Ms. Carino was exactly perfect. The statute provides that most of the members of the Citizens Advisory Committee should be residents of the watershed, but in certain technical positions, they're not required to be. So this is simply acknowledgement that you have that flexibility, but it's not a requirement that you have to appoint people who are outside the watershed.
Madam.
It says other interest. I understand the technical part, but other interested parties, I don't feel personally should be sitting on our board, or on our CAC. But, that's just the way it is.
Well, Madam,
Yeah, if it's a law, it's a law.
Madam President, I would assume, maybe Lewis will guide me here, that really what they're talking about is if we had our engineering firm, which is appointed from us, or our legal counsel, which are appointed by us, not necessarily a residents of our district, but if they became attached for some time to the committee for whatever work are necessary. That's the way I kind of interpreted it, but I do agree with you, Madam President. I'm not interested in appointing
Other interested parties.
non-government organizations that are not residents of the district.
If I can add one thing to support what you are both saying is those lines and sections always say, end with serving at the pleasure of the managers. And so you are not obligated in any way to appoint anyone that you don't see as an appropriate member of the CAC. So again, it's your option, but it is always at your appointment. You are the decision makers there.
Manager Wagaman?
Well, I would assume that rule was probably put in there's probably watersheds that are smaller or have less area to pick from, but our watershed we should have anybody we need, we should be able to find in our watershed, I would believe. But I understand why it's there. I don't think it's a problem.
Madam President, just like I said, it allows us to appoint Beth to be down there. For example, our staff members to be on it. But I totally agree with both of you that we have plenty in our 180 square miles.
Yeah.
And our staff, if they don't live in the watershed district and they attended, or our consultants, that's fine. It's with our approval, because we're paying their wages.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's not what I.
And we don't vote.
That's what I was referring to.
But nevertheless, you're there, and so.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need do we have a consensus to move this forward? Or unless there's a question?
One more typo,
Oh,
if you want.
typo.
Typo type. Page 3 of the document, page 201 of our packet, you have new underlined language. And the very last underlined language that has been added is the use of interactive technology is an option and is outlined in the section meeting schedules. I would recommend to your consideration that you add it to the first new bullet point. The CAC may utilize interactive and make it the third hollow circle under that. In other words, you move it up from following quorum and meeting cancellations to include it as part of the utilizing interactive technology.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. I may circle back to you.
That's fine.
I've made some notes, but I think that makes sense, and I will we can present it to the CAC.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, consensus to move this on. And
Yes.
everybody
Yes.
good?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
Very good.
let's do that. Next thing is office.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you, Beth. Operations.
Yes, Madam Chair, Board of Managers, the next item here is a health and safety protocol policy. The district wants to be nimble in the face of any future health or safety issue. At the April workshop, the board considered some language, provided some suggested adjustment to bring it back to the board. This policy would authorize the board president and the administrator to adjust office operations in the face of such an issue. The adjusted language from the workshop was, I engaged Lewis, your district counsel, on the language, and the final language is on page 216 of your packet. And we believe it captures the workshop discussion, and there is a short motion at the bottom of the page there.
Okay. Take a motion, please.
Madam President, I move to adopt policy 3.6, workplace conditions policy.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Any kind of discussion or questions for Nick? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
District Telework.
Yes, Board of Managers, also at that April workshop, we had consideration of a district telework policy intended to support efficiency and defined office coverage, and as well as focused work time for staff. We had a good discussion about the changing workplace dynamics and support for the district, and also attracting and retaining quality workers in the water resource field. We had that language in the workshop packets. It's identical here, except that I have added language on page 219 of your packet, fourth block of text from the bottom, where the underlined portion there, I included the frequently asked questions for the telework policy into the policy itself. I think that adds clarity for the reader, human resource folks in our office, in the administration, but also staff to know and understand and prompt them to ask any additional questions. With that, there is a short motion at the bottom of page 218 for your consideration.
Motion, please.
Madam President, I move to approve adoption of the telework policy.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Steve?
Madam President, I move to approve the check register dated April 27th, 2022 in the amount of $381,912.10, prepared by Redpath and Company.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, items for discussion. We moved a new one on that one. Nick?
Yes, President Preiner, Board of Managers, next we have legislative updates. Beth is going to lead us through. You'll remember we had a past board meeting where we talked about some of the bills in front of our representatives. So we thought we should touch base on this once again.
Okay, thank you. Beth?
Hello, thank you, President Preiner, Board of Managers. I'm coming to provide you with an update on some language that has found itself into the omnibus bill regarding kind of a database and clearinghouse of information for public drainage systems, improvements and repairs, maintenance and improvements. That was originally House File 4274. The language regarding a database, a publicly accessible database for public drainage activities has found its way into the omnibus bill, House File 4492. As a board, you instructed staff to send a letter to all of our legislative delegates stating our concerns and opposition to this language, which we did, and it was sent out on April 14th. It was our intention at that time to monitor the situation and provide you with follow-up and make a recommendation for strategy. I will note that the language is still in the omnibus bill. However, the Senate has not agreed to a companion. There's all sorts of discussion about, why it's there and what the long game is. However, we do know that in general and overall, the Senate is not in favor of this language. We do feel that while it is hard to argue with transparency, we are kind of prepared for a couple of different scenarios. The best scenarios that we see is that the Senate will say no, or that it will get sent directly to the drainage work group to kind of work through some of the more egregious parts of the language. What staff is kind of recommending is that with this current information that we have, I'm going to take one more step back. Omnibus bills are usually, some of the last pieces to be approved and worked through. And so we don't anticipate approval of the omnibus until approximately the last week, or as the session ends. So, we see that we have a little bit of time to kind of continue to build opposition to this language. So staff is proposing that with this current information, we send emails, kind of an e-blast, to all of our legislative delegates again, not just in the Senate, but to reinforce our opposition to this in the House. And again, short and sweet, reviewing the situation that this language is in the omnibus bill, and that it could have devastating consequences related to flooding if this language were allowed to stand. And then we would send that in an email by next week. Staff proposes that we would continue to monitor, and as we hear information from our partners and stakeholders on the status of this, we would create additional strategies for follow-up that may include phone calls or other outreach specific or to specific and strategic legislators in the House and the Senate. The staff is also recommending that we send language to the chairs of the Senate committee to make sure that they know that there is opposition to including it in the Senate omnibus.
Any questions for Beth? Comments?
Madam President, thank you, Beth, for sending the letters out. I had a report from Washington County. They were happy to hear the letter. It was discussed at the board meeting last week or the week before as to the significance of it. And so that kind of outreach with our partners is very important, and my understanding is the Washington County Board is supportive of removing the language and was going to have their staff contact the Association of Counties and see if something else could be done about that. So thank you very much. And that extra touch where you sit down and talk to the legislators or their legislative assistants with the phone calls or such makes such a difference to personal follow-up. In this case with the commissioners. So because I had a discussion with them about it, and so that's what brings it about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beth. Okay. Anything else on that? Okay. Staff reports, anybody?
Is there any other legislation?
Oh,
I think there's some miscommunication between me and Administrator Tomczyk. Nick, did you want me to discuss some of the White Bear Lake legislation and our actions on that, or were you going to do that? I apologize.
No problem.
I can speak to it.
Yes, President Preiner, Beth and I had discussed the White Bear Lake legislation regarding the well pumping. You were given an article that was in the newspaper. Manager Waller was kind enough to forward that, and the discussions continue about White Bear Lake, its water level, and the interaction of the wells from the court order, et cetera. So, yes, Beth, if with Madam Chair's approval, if you could address that, please.
Absolutely. I apologize for that.
No problem.
For that misunderstanding. So that legislation is out there. There's quite a bit of talk about it, obviously. We were contacted, Administrator Tomczyk was contacted by Senator Kunish, who is a senator in our district. She was a representative before, and asked for kind of, do we have a position on this? We responded, that we support science and study, and really look to our partners in Washington County with their groundwater plan and the steps that they had taken in that. So We were very excited and pleased that the senator reached out to us and saw us as a valuable partner and stakeholder in with that legislation, and that's kind of where we left that discussion with her, wanting to definitely defer to our valuable partners and stakeholders on this issue.
So, Madam President.
Go ahead.
So I was sitting at home and picked up my mail, and my local newspaper came with this article attached to it. So it made me go and ask some questions, a little bit more about what's going on. As I understand it, the judge ordered some time ago to have the department write a plan. And now the plan has been written. And the plan is being presented, I believe it was presented to the judge yesterday. I don't know if Lewis has any update on what happened or not, but one of the things that's in the plan is that the cities will be required within the 5-mile radius of White Bear Lake to go out and measure water consumption in all wells, public, private, residential, if you want, whatever you want to call it. And they will establish a criteria or a level of what your normal use is. When the lake level then falls below the judge's requirement, a 40% reduction will be made in all wells, whether you're your household well, or your school, or your hospital, or your industry, or such. Now that's not 40% from the permitted or legal level. For example, if the well was permitted to pump 1,000 gallons a day, and the city determined you're only pumping 250 in the time of the drought, you will reduce the 250 by 40%. So this is, it's kind of, you might say, upside down. Remember, the DNR was against any of this before. Now they've been ordered to write a very strict rule and letter. And so the Senate has a bill, which is file 3055, which has been, I understand, rolled into the omnibus bill. So I don't know what the new number would be, but it's
and it was authored by Senators Housley and Chamberlain.
Yes, and it's been rolled into the omnibus bill. It had hearings. This is a little different than the bill we just discussed, where there were no hearings, and the chairman just threw it in there. There were hearings, there was testimony, and of course in the House this hasn't gone anywhere. One of the reasons is that, from what I understand, is that non-government organizations that have an interest in water have been very, very heavy-handed in the lobbying. They're the ones that are primarily behind the bill that was in the House. It's my understanding that one of those organizations received a $1.5 million grant, which they hired this is House bill now, which they hired a few interns to spend some years studying drainage authorities and use the Information Act, public information, and they got tired of doing that, and so they want it now publicly put down this 30-day bulletin board thing. In the case of White Bear Lake, we have very strong advocates here who want us to all use the water out of the Mississippi River, which is an expensive program. And I'd also just remind you, as we remember from 1988 was a drought year, and at that time the St. Paul Water Authority, which hadn't been, quote, using their tertiary water source of Centerville, Peltier, Bald Eagle lakes, drained Peltier practically to nothing that year, put the 3 feet of the dam on for the future and such, because they couldn't get enough water. And it's my recall that there was talk in the Minneapolis newspaper of going up north to Lower Red Lake and digging a ditch right into the Mississippi River to water those on Minneapolis and St. Paul. I just think that we should take a look again when all of this bureaucracy gets settled down. Maybe the local governments, Washington County has a $20 million bonding fund could be used for providing more surface water to White Bear Lake to feed the aquifers and to keep the surface level up so that we wouldn't be subjected to this decision that of having your well monitored and the water police come out and check it out. So, but then in the future, with that funding source, the watersheds, this also involves Valley Creek, not just us, Lake Elmo. The DNR study has discovered that Shoreview, even though they're outside the 5 mile area, Woodbury, even though they're outside the 5 mile area, is drawing water out of that White Bear Lake aquifer. So as we've discussed all this about 5-6 years ago about putting more water in the lake, and maybe it's time that local unit of governments get together and we work something out with our cities and our partners. Thank you, Madam President.
So, Madam President, I've only been approached by one person so far. But obviously, I live within that 5 mile radius, and I've already told my wife we're going to put in a long fescue. But whose position was that all of the townships and cities that are affected by this should buy their water from the St. Paul Water Authority. Thus, as the method by which they would acquire the water from the Mississippi would be indirectly.
Right. Yeah.
And I said that I did not believe that Rice Creek had a fight in this because that was not a water quality issue or a flooding issue. But that's so. If I'm wrong on that, we should open up a discussion. But I don't think I'm wrong on that.
Madam President, I would say that maybe not the direct leadership in this fight, because we don't have the $20 million bonding fund that Washington County has. But I think that as a watershed, and what we're talking about is surface water. So whether they want the Mississippi surface water or whether you want surface water that comes from within the district, which could be rerouted, I think the district has a role to play in this. And that, because I just don't see that, I mean, where do you, what's so magic about 5 miles? I mean,
well,
and you know, why not Egan? Yeah. Why not Bloomington? You know, or
based
anybody.
On my reading of the studies, Hugo and the north end of the township where I live don't get their water from the same aquifer. It's affecting that lake.
And you're correct about that. I don't.
It was an overreach, and I was very disappointed in the appeals that went up to court that did not address that overreach at all.
I don't disagree with you about the issue, but I mean, sometimes the bureaucracy just has a hold of you, and a hold of us. And maybe it's time for our partners with the cities in Valley Creek or the consortium at Washington County and Ramsey County because the Northeast Metro here, we've never drawn our water from the St. Paul system. And in fact, the St. Paul system has used our surface water and still has the authority of it. And I know the staff tries to comfort me on this by saying, well, they're going to abandon it someday. And I always ask them, have they signed the paper yet? And they say, no, not yet, Manager Waller, not yet. And so I think that I don't really want to be caught up in the St. Paul Water Authority web.
Okay, staff reports. Anybody have any questions on the staff reports? Thank you, John. Go ahead, Nick.
Yes, President Priner, Board Manager, I just make note regarding the last subject matter there that staff would communicate to the board that, as we always do, investigate carefully, that we move forward with great care and holistically in understanding the movement of surface waters to any degree. You may recall that we have a grant currently where we're investigating the backflow from Peltier when St. Paul Water Works would pump those waters, and it might have been to detriment of Centerville Lake. So with that Mississippi water, Bald Eagle Lake, wherever you're moving it to, you have your invasive species, et cetera, and look before you leap.
Okay. Anybody else? Nothing on staff reports, May calendar, everybody on board with the May calendar?
Madam Chair, one thing I note about in the staff reports, going back to that, Patrick, there's a lot of building going on. Yeah.
Yes.
And you're going to be, I mean, now that you're here in Mounds View, you might want to just drive through New Brighton perhaps and see some of the expansion that's going on there. So two things on that is that, yes, there's a lot of permitting and inspections that need to be done. And yeah, I just acknowledge that your workload has increased significantly.
Yeah, just a quick comment on it, and I've mentioned it before. Last year was the highest amount of applications we've had since I think it was 2005. We're a little bit behind the pace of last year, but we've had a lot of applications kind of come in at once. You only have 2 on this meeting, but I think there's a number that are coming on the next one, and yeah, shaping up to be a busy construction season.
And they're not small. I mean, even the one we approved in the, earlier in the meeting, we're talking about half of the Roseville Mall. So these are huge infill or,
Seems like they're-
redevelopment pieces.
Seems like they're redoing the Roseville Mall at least every 6 months.
Yeah, it does. Well, that's a very good point, Manager Wayne, that the permit may say it'll be one number, but there might be 200 homes underneath it, and that means 200 inspections. And, I reckon you folks have work right through the next depression.
Well, with the interest rates going up, it's going to start to slow. In fact, I've talked to people that
Yeah,
now they're taking off the table.
I don't disagree with
Yeah.
you, Madam President. We've sat here for years when we didn't have any residential ones except for in Hugo,
Yep.
where they built 75 to 100 homes every year, but we didn't see those directly because they did it themselves. But yeah, so don't worry, staff, you're not going to be laid off.
You'll have plenty to do.
We're going to keep you.
Okay, administrative updates. Administrator, go
Yes,
ahead.
President Priner, Board of Managers, in regards to the last subject, I'd just note, we live on the urban fringe, or we exist on the urban fringe. So not only that redevelopment of our Tier 1 suburbs, Roseville, et cetera, but that whole Columbus, Hugo, those developing areas. So it will continue into the future, I'm quite certain. I did engage in a Houston task order for public drainage system inspection, level 2 and 3, that has to do with a drone flying the system and videoing, taking pictures of issues. There's also some survey being completed for JD4 within that. You good folks were at Metro Mod. You heard PCA talk about the professional judgment group on waters, as well as Met Council referencing their priority water plans. I just wanted you to note that district staff is involved in that. We received those emails. Matt and I are engaged with those entities on that. And then I think it would be good if the board to hear Kyle Axtell regarding Plop and Halls Marsh, and maybe just a quick update, because I know we've been engaging our partners a little bit.
Sure.
Just take a moment.
Kyle?
Madam President, members of the board, I don't know if Mayor Wingfield is still on to hear the update, but certainly I can share as well. Since we last spoke, it's probably been March, I think it was, that we last discussed that at the board level. And just so you're aware, I have been working on drafting kind of a set of terms, if you will, for all of the parties to consider in moving that forward, which would involve work by our municipal partners that have some of those other inputs to the system at Preby Lake, Pond A as it's called, and Wedgewood Hills and Matamidi. Draft for consideration at this point is forthcoming. I think staff's perspective is we'd like to see some of that work on the, entrances to the system as far as sediment management done concurrently or ahead of when ultimately I think staff will be recommending that we move forward at Halls Marsh to do some work there as well with the sediment deltas that exist. So there's testing involved. There's so many things. It's a complicated subject, as we've all discussed in the past, but that is forthcoming. So I would expect in the near future we'll have something to share with our partners and with the board and progress that forward.
So Halls Marsh is or is not a district facility?
So the Preview Lake Outfall project is a district facility. That includes the pipe network down to Halls Marsh. It includes the Halls Marsh outlet, which I think is actually has its own entry in our facilities inventory. What's at question is who's responsible for sediment deposition that has occurred in Halls Marsh. There is sediment deposition that has occurred at the outlet of the pipe into Halls Marsh.
Does this at all align with Lost Lake, as in Lost Lake?
It's a different issue.
Lost Lake is a separate issue. That's a different.
I know it's a
drain.
separate issue, but it's like we own part of the.
So
we'll talk later, but
yeah. So
yeah.
the Halls Marsh itself is a public water wetland. It lies on property that's owned by Birchwood Village and then partially some other private properties as well. Birchwood Village has contended that the Watershed District is responsible, should clean out that sediment there. I think there's evidence to demonstrate that there is sediment accumulating at that pipe outlet in Halls Marsh. From staff's perspective, would be difficult to argue it did not come from that pipe based on where it's located.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to deal with that? So we'll cross those thresholds again. I think it's a partnership effort to deal with the holistic system,
Mm-hmm.
and again we'll have a recommendation for the board formally at a future date. But I'll say it's likely to be some work done down there.
And I'm sorry, I said Lost Lake. I meant the lake that's over by the Mississippi
Oh,
River.
Lock Lake.
Lock
Lake.
Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah,
Anything else?
different set of scenarios
Yes.
there with
Okay, got it.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Kyle? Comments? No? Very good. Thank you, Kyle. Okay. Nothing else? Manager update? Manager Waller?
Well, Madam President, I discussed earlier about the legislation, but I did attend the MOD meeting along with you and Manager Wayne. And I don't remember if you were there or not, Manager Bradley, but
I was on vacation. I was not able to attend.
well, congratulations. I'll let Madam President, you and Manager Wynett talk about most of the issues. The one issue that really kind of disturbed me was the idea of increasing the metro dues to subsidize the outstate. And it brings up that question to me is, what do we even need to be there for? I mean,
Well, that is a question.
We're at 7,500 now, and as I remember, it was like 15,000 they wanted the first time, and
It seems like they're coming back to that.
yeah, well, they're coming back to yes. So, anyways,
So-
but with that, I'll let you go.
Okay.
Give it back.
Manager Bradley?
No, I'm on for the CAC meeting. Looking forward to that.
And I have nothing.
Nothing new? Marcy?
Nothing more? No.
And I have nothing new either. I did sit in on the MOD meeting. It's just a hard thing because most of it does not directly respond. It doesn't do what we need to do in our district so much. They have a little different take. But it's very well run and they try very hard and I'm glad they're involved in the legislative part. So
Yeah.
with that, I can, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, President Priner, Board of Managers, appreciate the discussion on how MOD may or may not proceed, but you should know that there's a good deal of behind-the-scenes activity, coordination, conversation about the House or Senate files, and sharing of information in these types of partnerships where if the agencies, the public, receive consistent messaging that I think supports the direction of watersheds and specifically how Rice Creek may move. Obviously an independent organization and we can do as we wish.
Madam Chair, I just would add, because I'm on the Clean Water Council, I'm invited to the MAUD meeting, not, in addition to the board.
Executive board.
To the executive board meeting, and those are always interesting, and nothing to report from it except that I do attend and report on the Clean Water Council activities.
Anything else? I have nothing new. I'll entertain a motion.
Move adjourned.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
The long,